Thank you very much, Sean. Welcome, everyone, to another session of RM Smart Investing Wednesday class coming to you from Vegas, which is popping and is almost back to business here. So it's amazing time compared to a year ago when I was here. It was surrealistic to see. It was a ghost town. So glad to see that. Today, what I thought about is it might be a timely subject about experiences and the lessons that I've learned in the past 36 years of being managing portfolios and trading. And I wanted to see what some of the traits of the great investors and traders are. And we titled it the Seven Secrets of the Greatest Investors and Traders. And basically, what we're gonna look at again, what made them successful. And again, was there any specific things about them while they have such a wide variety of backgrounds and preferences. So we found there are some common grounds. One of the things I want to start with this, Jack Schwager is, he did a magnificent thing in the 1980s. He came up with a book called Market Wizards. And I wholeheartedly encourage you, if there's any book that you want to read, this should be one of those top 10. Then he came with the new Market Wizards, and he interviewed some of the most successful traders in different aspects of trading and investors, and want to see what are their common ground. And that's what, if you have a chance, again, definitely the Market Wizards, the new Market Wizards. He came with the hedge fund Market Wizards, the stock Market Wizards. Just the past year in 2020, in October, he came out with the unknown Market Wizards. So they are great books, but I definitely encourage you the first one. It's fascinating, and you shall see in the next 30 minutes or so what are these common traits. And again, I've kind of mixed some of my own experiences with that. And when we talk about today, we're going to mix it basically with great investors such as Warren Buffett and John Templeton, with the great traders like Jesse Livermore and George Soros and Paul Tudor Jones and many, many more. Lots of hedge fund managers, and also we're talking about some institutional fund managers and what makes them successful. Before we go any further, I just wanted to share something that really changed my story of life, and it goes back to October 1987. We call it Black Monday. On October 19th, the Dow Jones Industrial dropped 508 points, which was about 22.3%. And at that time, that was the biggest one day. It shook many people up. And as you can see, I have the chart of it. And basically, that was a very interesting day for a young man who had just started his career in finance, and a career that I really, um, widest stream, I never thought I would be in finance. I mean, when I started my career in finance, I actually was supposed to be starting to become a neurosurgeon. I had gone to pre-med school. And then I ended up graduating as an actuary, working with numbers and computer programming and probabilities. And I thought, wow, this is wonderful. And I found it really boring. And then what happened was I ended up being a soccer coach, high school soccer coach at age 22, till somebody mentioned that I will be good in finance. Again, someone that had no background in finance. I really didn't know anything about stock market or investing, and basically had taken one economic class. And based on that, when I started my career, which was mainly on the mutual fund side of things, and by the time 1987 it happened, I was not really too much involved, or I was aware of a lot about the markets to affect me that much. And the reason I shared the story with you is on the day of, again, that Black Monday, I was on the phone with the desk at Prudential Beige, and they had, they had office in the World Trade Center. And as I'm talking to these the brokers out there, somebody yells and says, somebody jumped out the window. that at that time, a couple of brokers actually, they jumped out of the window from the World Trade Center from Prudential Beige. They were Prudential Beige brokers, and it kind of that shook me. I was again, they say ignorance is a bliss, and that kind of taught me something that I was not again too shaken up because I didn't know enough. I didn't know what was going on. All I know is this is what happened. And I said, well, I'm just going to wait it out. I had some clients in mutual funds. And the reason I want to share this with you, these are more of a, again, like the technical, you can see how that one day, actually Friday, the market dropped 109 points, which was a big drop. And then after that, we had the 508 points. But you can see we had this bounce and it continued. The same thing happened in S&P 500. The same thing happened in NASDAQ. And we look a little farther beyond that, and we can see this is the 87. What happened in 88, 89? We basically by 89 had gone back to the high of the August, and we continued going up. The lesson of the story is what I learned is why these people, these brokers, committed suicide, basically killed themselves in a sense, and for something that first of all they had no control, but on the reason that if they would have waited it out a little bit, you can see the times would have accommodated them. So what I learned was number one, I'm not going to be too emotionally attached to the markets. I'm going to be the one who's going to be proactive and managing things and managing risk. So for me, the question was, is it worth it to lose your life over the markets? Granted, they probably had clients and other things, but it is all about, again, the traits that I'm going to talk about. That was a first-hand lesson for me, was that emotional side of things. So let's continue. Again, this is this blip. This is what happened in 87, and this is on a monthly for the last 100 years of Dow Jones, and you can see where we are now. So you can see this was a little blip. So basically, this is the 2000, and then the 2007 and 8, 9. That was a big drop, and here we are. So I just want to share a little more things, just more of a, the news. This is in the 80s, what was happening, what was the reasons for those, and even the presidency of each president. And at the end of the day, you can see that in 1987, actually markets ended up being up 2.26%. And then the following year, they were up nicely. And then the following year, they were up nicely. So again, the lesson is if these brokers wouldn't have had that emotional reaction, they would have weathered it out. So let's start with what is the first trade that the greatest investors and the traders have. The number one thing, and I truly believe in that, is their independent thinker. It sounds easy, but it is very much depending on your personality. They don't get swayed by public, and they also not emotionally attached to the markets and the people around them. They are very much detached. Again, it's easier said than done, but this is the trait they have. And that's something I've tried to be, especially I had that really dramatic experience, and again, in 1987. So, as you know, there's like this herd mentality. What that means is we have a group thinking. And the reason for that is because people like to have emotional comfort when there's a discomfort out there. It just justifies their decisions. These great traders, they don't have this herd mentality. They call them tribal genes. They are not in a group of a tribe mentality. They are very independent. A lot of times they're very contrarian. And when the things are going against them, basically against the markets, they're the ones who look for opportunities. And then there's euphoria or exuberance. That's when they are ready to start exiting the markets. So they don't have this herd mentality. They're not affected with extreme moments of fear and exuberance. And especially as I mentioned, because of the herd mentality, there is, it makes sense, it's our, human emotional needs, that we look for comfort, and they don't need that. And also, they're not very aware of other people's emotions. They're very independent. And but I've shared, again, not that I'm in that category, but I don't listen. I mean, to the opinions. I do watch, the financial news on mute. I just want to see what's going on, and if there's someone that I'm interested to listen to, I would. But I'm not into the opinions of the biasness or unbiasedness or whatever the pundits want to give me. This is a decision, and I'm gonna make it. I'm not gonna be at the mercy of what other people wants me to think. It's interesting, in 2016, there was a study done with the cover of 44 covers of economists, which I really like. I mean, I enjoy reading economists, but the interesting thing was between 1998 and 2016, when Gregory Marx and Brett Donnelly of Citigroup, they looked at things, they found that they were looking at the visual impactful cover magazine, and they want to see how people react. An interesting thing was that they found out that about 68% of time, these were contrarian. So this is the sentiment, let's say, this phenomenon when everything is going to dumps and everything is the worst case. Usually that's a turning point and things will get better. When there's internet boom and everybody's becoming millionaires and you cannot go wrong, those are times you have to be cautious. And I found that very interesting. Again, it was the emotional side of, again, the investors and how the public views things. John Templeton is one of my heroes, and not only as a great investor, the father of global investing, but as a human being. And I've talked a lot about him, and it was sad that I never got the chance to actually meet him in person, but he's done a lot. He's affected my life a lot with his outlook about life and his purpose in life. And he has, I just want to share these 6 guiding principles from John Templeton, which was, it came from a book by Richard Weiser, Happier. And he had talked to John, and these are the things that 6 points that he picked up. And John Templeton, number one thing he thought about was to be aware of emotions. Because again, we attach too much emotions in investing, and we don't become unbiased. We will attach our emotions and our biases and our thoughts to the outcome. And also, again, about the ignorance, about how we should diversify our portfolio. He was in multiple countries, and he also talks about being patient, which we will talk more about it. And he always looked for value and the bargains around the world. And this is interesting. This is timeless, what he's talking about. And here we go, number 6, don't chase fads. And, we have these meme, and we have cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin and Dogecoin, and, a lot of things come and go, electrical vehicles and basically the batteries and all that. So the crowd madness. So I thought this is interesting. Again, you will have the slides so you can review it more. If you have a chance to read any of the books by John Templeton, you can read about him, but he's written some really great books about life as a whole, and it's wonderful. The second thing is, I found it very interesting that these great investors and traders, they have they very much have self-awareness, and they do have set up the core beliefs. They know who they are, and they know their shortcomings, and they know their strengths. And because of that, they've come up with their own trading system, which that fits their personality. If you recall, when I speak with people that I work with and I talk to, and the students that people have mentored, it's important to know who you are, and you have to understand your personality. So basically, you cannot force yourself to become someone that you're not. And it's amazing things that it's a lot of different systems work, which they're very contrary to each other. You have value, you have growth. Then you have momentum investing. You have fundamental analysis, fundamentalists. You have technical analysis and the technicians. You have international, they swear that everything should be internationally oriented. Then you have people who believe in domestic investments, the familiarity, people, things that don't go outside that. Then you think about people who basically they believe that you should invest in just the commodities or just the stock sectors, different stock markets. So it's funny that all of these, the investors, they're all successful in so many variety of things. As I mentioned, they could be contrarian, but yet because of that self-awareness, they have found that niche. And because of they believe in that, they know that their methodology works for them, then they continue with that. But they also know their limitations. They know what things they should not do, which I think is as important, if not more so. So they understand that part. So they don't put a lot of energy on that. They know that doesn't work. They know what their limitations are. As a matter of fact, Charles Munger, the co-founder with Warren Buffett, is also one of my heroes. Has so much wisdom. He calls things that you don't know and what not to do. He calls them the standard, the stupidity. He wants you to remember that the things that it's not going to work. Let's look at them. Let's know what it is not working and don't do it rather than trying to force it on yourself. So that's the second thing. And again, I truly believe in the self-awareness. One of the things, again, Warren Buffett has said is the best investments you can make is an investment in yourself. The more you learn, the more you earn, but also it's the self-understanding of who you are. The third lesson, which is very common, is extreme patience. The investors and traders, they are very good at waiting for the opportunity to present itself. They do not force the trade. They do not force the investments. I call it, they let the market come to them rather than they chasing it. Sometimes we see things in the markets, the way we interpret it, which is not really the fact. It's not really happening, but because we want to see from our own lenses, we look for any excuse to look at it and say, no, well, oh, I found another reason. That's another reason. We're basically forcing it to have an excuse to basically be in that trade. You will know when the market is ripe and it's the right time, you will understand it. I have a very good trader friend, one of the probably most successful traders that I know, and he has a great saying that he compares himself to crocodile lying down by next to Nile River. He said they sit tight for months and months, and for 1 month they feast on the gazelles, which they're moving, and they for a whole month they feast on that. So sitting tight is very important. And Jesse Livermore has also said, it's not what you're doing, is what it's all about. You're sitting, and got to watch the markets. Let them, everything works together, and let them come to you. Don't force things. The fourth thing is discipline. And basically, these great investors and traders, they understand the rules, the fundamental rules, what applies. And they, once they set it up, we talked about their personality, and they found the fit, they follow it. The biggest problem that I found is because we have so much access to the information around us. I mean, everything is available. A 3-year-old has access to so much information to a 90-year-old. Because of that, we have accessibility. Unfortunately, what it does, and I've said it, I guess I use this quote a lot, is we have the ocean of information and ankle depth of knowledge. So we have all this, but we don't have any depth of the knowledge. You want to have a deep understanding of things. So you don't jump from one tree to another, to another, to another. What is the fad of the today? And then at the end of the day, at the end of like, you do some investing and say, well, this doesn't work. I'm going to try this. Oh, this doesn't work. I'm going to try this. And unfortunately, what happens, this is a cycle we go through. At the end of the day, we don't become a very good investor or trader, and then we blame that, that the systems don't work, basically you want to find again what you're good at and stick with it. And again, these great investors, they have found a methodology that works for them, and they remain true to that approach. And of course, they're adaptable. They do make changes but the true core is the same. And they do have, again, as I mentioned, you could have a technician who's very successful looking at charts, and you have a fundamental analyst who spends hours and hours, and he's very good at type of investing. Number 5, which is, as you know, is so important to me, is the risk control. They understand, first of all, that losing is part of the game. We cannot let our ego come into the picture thinking that we are invincible and take it very personally. This is, after all, is markets. There is no guarantee. There's no document written that you are going to be 100% successful and going to make 100% on your money. If that was the case, it will not be a market. So basically, it is, once we accept that and accept that the probability of losing money, life becomes a lot easier. When I do put a trade, I immediately know there's a 1/3 chance that I'm not gonna be successful at that. Since I understand that, it doesn't hurt my ego if the things go against me. And because of that, then I can manage the risk a lot easier. And because of that, they have a very rigid control in place. So I'm going to spend actually few codes, because that's how important it is to have understanding of your risk control. Basically, I've got a few sayings from different successful investors and a lot of great financiers and traders. Bernard Baruch, which was a great financier in like 1920s and 30s, and what he had said was, one of the worst mistakes anyone can make is to hold on blindly and refuse to admit that his judgment has been wrong. This ego is a human side of the things that we have to be right all the time. If you have made a mistake, admit it immediately and take your loss. It's easier said than done, but you have to look at it as a business and cut that loss. Don't expect to be right all the time. If you have made a mistake, cut your losses as quickly as possible, which is, again, repeating in the first two. In the stock market, the first loss is usually the smallest. And that's where everyone makes that mistake, because then we live on a hope that small becomes a little bigger and bigger and bigger and ends up to become a big hole. Now, Jesse Livermore, that some say he was the greatest trader of the 20th century, and he made, in today's 130 million or so, and he lost it all 2 or 3 times, and ended up, I believe, committed suicide. But he was brilliant in what he had suggested. It was about the speculator. So a speculator has to insure himself against considerable losses by taking the first small loss. Profits take care of themselves, but losses never do. It's such an important line. I think that it's important to understand that. And then protect yourself by selling your stock before the loss assumes larger proportion. Again, these are a lot easier said than done, but once you build that habit of risk management, things get a lot easier. Paul Tudor Jones, which incidentally he did fantastic on that 1987 Black Monday, and there's a great documentary, I don't know if it's still available, about his trade during that time in 1987. And he's right now he's a big philanthropist, and he's a great hedge fund manager, and he's involved with a lot of different markets. His foundation is the Robin Hood Foundation, and he looked at different things, and for him the most important rule of trading is to play great defense, not great offense. In soccer we say, Offense wins games, defense wins championship. And I truly believe in that. Don't focus on making money, focus on protecting what you have. If I have positions going against me, I get right out. I have a mental stop. If it hits that number, I'm out no matter what. Now, some people use hard stops. Again, it all depends on your personality, what kind of system, but the basis is the same. If you have a losing position that's making you uncomfortable, the solution is very simple: get out, because you can always get back in. That's another thing that you have to remember. In markets, you always have opportunity to get back in. And that fear of missing out plays a role a lot, unfortunately, with our biases. Now, William O'Neill, the founder of Investor Business Daily, which very much focused on the stock markets and also look at technical analysis, and he has great sayings as well. You must always protect your investment account. Cutting losses is absolutely essential. If you don't cut every loss quickly, sooner or later you'll suffer some very large losses. Big losses will cause you to lose your confidence, which you absolutely cannot let happen if you expect to continue investing. And think of a number of controlled losses as your tuition to Wall Street. And I use that a lot. You know, it's a tuition, you're going to pay something. So why don't you do it while at work? And, you know, basically it's the lessons that we learn, it's going to be lifetime lessons. Now, George Soros is, again, one of the greatest traders from Forex and currencies to his quantum hedge fund with Jim Rogers. And he's had many of the sayings, but one of the things he says, if I had to sum up my practical skills, I would use one word: survival. I have a strong critical faculty. I'm not a professional security analyst. I would rather call myself an insecurity analyst. I recognize that I may be wrong. This makes me insecure. My sense of insecurity keeps me alert, always ready to correct my errors. My approach works not by making valid predictions, but by allowing me to correct false ones. And this is very important, in my opinion, is unfortunately a lot of, again, pundits, they jump over everything to make the predictions, and for them it's always about being right. Again, you can see a lot of these investors and traders, the bottom line is they look at it as a business. They look at what is going to take it away from them, and they want to protect that. To others, being wrong is a source of shame. To me, recognizing my mistakes is a source of pride. Once we realize that imperfect understanding is the human condition, there is no shame in being wrong, only in failing to correct our mistakes. Where do I think I excel? Is in recognizing my mistakes, you see? And that is the secret to my success. The key insight that I have reached in recognition of the inherent fallibility of human thought. Number 6 is that, again, once we build those foundations, it's that positive self-belief. They have confidence in their trading system because it's theirs. They had the fundamental rules. They know how to manage this risk. They believe in that, and with that comes confidence and competence. And because of that, they really have a driving desires. They love what they do. I mean, a lot of them, you know, use Paul Tudor Jones. They don't get a lot of sleep, and it's not. They don't look at this as a chore. They look at it as a passion, and they're willing to pay the price for it, whatever it takes. Last but not least, they're very serious about this. They look at it as a business. It's not a hobby. They take complete responsibility. They focus on process rather than outcome. And why do I put that in there is I go back to sports again. It's, let's say soccer, you know, we want to master our passing, our dribbling, our shooting, our vision. You look at our crosses. We want to be the best at that, but we also enjoy playing the game. You're not doing this just to show mechanically, oh, we can do it, to prove it to others. We're doing this because there's a joy to it. Now, scoring that goal is the final things, and we will enjoy it, but it's not completely about the winning. The money becomes a secondary. because it comes from the process of going through all these fundamental, again, understandings of what we are doing. And again, with the desire that we have, with the controlling the risk, with the, again, the as far as understanding where we stand and our purpose, then it makes life a lot easier. Last but not least, I thought to give you some more codes as far as this comes from like a market wizard for your own entertainment to see some of the, again, great investors and traders, what they think. And what happens is it gives you some understanding of why they're successful and why they have continued to outperform the markets and why they're still in business. And with that in mind, I want to make it short and sweet coming to you from Las Vegas because the city of probabilities and talk about options, the who makes most money, the option maker. So here we are. So with that in mind, Sean, we can stop the recording and I'll be happy to answer any questions that anyone has.